Number one versus number two. So I remember a long time ago, Shane and I saw a video of Gary Vee and Tony Robbins, and this is an image that I found from the internet. So even the internet was processing like who is the alpha, right? And so you got Tony Robbins, who's TESE, play, blast, consume, sleep, blast, double masculine. Gary Vee, who's FESE, play, blast, consume, sleep, blast, double masculine. So almost the same type, pound for pound. But the math says that Tony should be slightly more alpha or aggressive or whatever. But what we saw was that Gary was in fact more dominant than Tony. And at the time, we couldn't quite make sense of it. We're like, maybe we have the 128 order. And that's kind of a subjective order anyways. But now it's like these flashbacks. You know, now that we see the social needs, we go back like, oh, that's why that makes sense. Now let's go back over, look at this famous video of Gary Vee and Tony Robbins with this 1 and 2 in mind. It's kind of an animalistic thing. You get the two in the room and right away you see this sort of. So it's a very primal thing. We will go through as much as we can in the ST and define the terms, but it's very animalistic that you see that one person is on top of the other. And that's what everybody found fascinating. So real quick, you got your number one. He's even an icon for our number ones. He's going to have ego at the top, friends at the bottom. That's something I always couldn't make sense of Gary Vee. He's such a great guy, such a nice guy, such a loving guy. But I've been watching him for 15 years or so, and like he just doesn't really have friends. He'll say he does, but he really doesn't. Everybody in his life is just kind of like, all right, Gary, let me do what you want to do. And it's always him at the top. You can't have a lot of friends. Lonely at the top. It's very true, right? So you got flexing and friends, that's on a coin, and then responsibility and specializing, that's on a coin. And these top two are kind of saviors, and these bottom two are kind of demons, right? And then you got the Tony, he's more of a number two, so he's also responsible, but then he's got the friends. And so even though Tony should be less friendly, because he's TE rather than FE, yet Tony is way more friendly. And we're talking about looking at careers that span over decades, right? And even Jocko, like watching Jocko on a lot of podcasts and stuff, he's a funny, silly, goofy guy, and the same all these guys. So it's like it's a weird thing that the friendship factor, if you have that as a savior, as a 2 or a 4, that it pushes through even if you're kind of an asshole type. So the social needs seem to push through the functions in the animals. And there's so many things that are making sense here. This is a great example. A little bit of context. Gary Vee and Tony Robbins have known each other for a long time. I remember watching Tony Robbins. He had like a 2008 conference right when the economy was crashing. And I ended up stealing the tapes off the internet like we all did back in the old days. And I remember Gary Vee and had been watching him since 2006 or so. So I'm like, oh, there's that wine guy. I remember at the time, Tony had all these speakers and stuff, which he always does. And he does these conferences every year. It's the same old shit. And what I remember at the time is I saw that Gary just kind of came in, gave some quick, wasn't very touchy. It's another thing that we're noticing. Kind of like I had a pastor that didn't do hugs. Like, how are you the pastor of a large church and like everybody's hugging and you just stand there, frowny biscuit guy, and like it all makes sense. Like, oh, and I literally went back online just a couple months ago and watched sermons from him. I'm like, number one. So not a touchy feely type. Even though you're like, why not? You should be, your FE. So I remember all the way back then seeing Tony and all his pals and Gary like coming in, doing his thing, kind of being the king of his own hill, and then just running away and not playing the friends game. So here's just some images that I took now from the internet. One thing to notice, a lot of things to go through here, is you got Gary kind of in his own world. You got Tony laughing. Tony has got to have his stooge follow him around because Tony is a number 2, so he's got to always have the friends, the tribes. And what's funny at the time, like Gary's like, hey, you should get in on this thing called the fucking internet. Tony's here to sell his fucking book. He's here to sell his book. He's dressed up like a fucking stooge, wearing his fucking jacket. Who's the bigger alpha? The guy wearing the suit or the guy wearing the sweatshirt? Like, who is more confident? Who's more secure? And it's the little things like this that come out. Unshaven Gary Vee. He's more confident. He's more of the alpha than fucking Tony. Anyways, Tony has his buddies. He always has his helpers, his minions. And this guy's like, I'm trying to get Tony to get on social media and blah, blah, blah. And you just see this friend dynamic where the two is like always kind of wrestling and working and bargaining with people and helping people. And Gary doesn't waste any time with that. Gary knows what he wants. He's going there and he tells the guy what to do. He doesn't talk and discuss and bargain like you'll see Tony do it. All these fucking desperate twos. And I love like the t-shirt sticking out the bottom of his sweatshirt. And it's great. It's like everybody has their own style. If you're the guy that wears the suit, then wear the fucking suit. But if you're the guy that wears the sweatshirt with your t-shirt sticking out the bottom with your green fucking corduroys, it's making sense now. All right, so let me go through the clips. So that's just all kind of fun observations with 1s and 2s and the power dynamic. And it makes so much sense that why is it that a 1 and a 2 get in the room and it goes like this? Because the number 1 sees themselves at the top. And then number 2 sees themselves not at the bottom, but they don't see themselves at the top. They see themselves up there somewhere. And so it's so much of the way I've been processing the social needs, and I'll play the clips in a minute and shut up, is I'm seeing it so much like just NI of The Secret. And when you watch the videos of The Secret, if you manifest and you believe it, I'm like, yeah, sure, I get you what you're doing, that's great. Where I see The Secret happening, this is where The Secret is this is what I use, is the negative secret. When I come across negative people, which are fucking everywhere, what I do is I listen to their story. And I listen to their defeatism. And they're like, well, I'm just going to end up alone. I'm just going to end up by myself. I'm just going to end up getting fired. I'm just going to end up breaking. And I'm just like taking a list of all of the things that they are going to make happen. How do I know? I'm 45. I've lived through it over and over and over again. And it never not happened. So as soon as you hear somebody say something in the negative, run. Because you got 12 months before that shit happens. Here's the best part. You can waste your fucking 30s and your 20s trying to help, trying to stop, trying to give them some lesson. Here, let's take a look at some ops. It does nothing other than wear you out. They still will get what they want in the end. Because The Secret, that little secret bullshit, that book, it's so true, especially in the negative. Especially in the negative. So, with that kind of context, with that kind of momentum, you can't stop somebody that sees themselves down at the bottom having a fucking pity party for themselves. And the reverse is true. You can't stop somebody that sees themselves up there, right? And that's the whole opposite dynamic. And so the number ones, they're like, I see myself in this conversation dominating the other guy. And the number two guy is like, I just see myself having fun, having equally. And then you just play it out 20 minutes and the things shift themselves out. And that's like how powerful the social dynamics really are. All right, second half of this video, transitioning into their routines. Let's switch gears for a second. So you're sad, you're depressed, you're this type, you're that type, your mom, you're stuck, you don't know what to do in life, blah, 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 blah. What these guys have figured out, and so is Joe Rogan, so is everybody of every type, Jordan Peterson, so 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody's figured it out in every column, so it's not your fucking type, it's not your fucking special. It's have you figured out how to move your goddamn pathetic meat sack or not? Most people just go, meh, and they just sit there in their goo, and they're like, I'm not getting good feelings. I'm not running on default programs. I'm sad. Why doesn't something power up and move me? And what the grown-ups of all types figure out is, oh, you got to get some kind of routine. You got to know, of course, next Wednesday I'm going to feel sad. Of course I'm going to feel depressed. I know I'm old enough to see the fucking circuit. It's not fucking real. I'm going to feel sad. I'm going to feel insecure. I'm going to feel this. So what is the routine? And what's great is these guys, and most people are just fucking missing it, is they're sharing gold with each other. They're both like, hey, I'm running a multi-million-dollar business with thousands of employees and tons of stress everywhere. Hey, me too. So, hey, on days that are fucking hard, which are most days, because you got 1,000 times more stress than the average person, but yet you still are just the average person, how the fuck are you getting yourself through it?
So I do this radical breathing. Takes a minute. Then I do 3 things for 3 minutes, really simple. I take 3 minutes and I focus on 3 specific individual things that I'm grateful for, but I don't think about them intellectually. I step into the moment, remember it, feel it, and so what it does is it activates it not as thought, but as a biochemistry.
Touch me.
Then I do 3 minutes of prayer and blessings, starting with my family, moving out to everybody, my clients, friends, people I meet. And then I do 3 minutes on what I call 3 to Thrive, where I focus on 3 important outcomes that I have, that I want to accomplish, but I don't think about one accomplishment. I see it, I feel it, I experience it, it's done, I feel grateful.
That's your move.
I actually go 15 or 20 minutes around because it feels so good. But what's happened is now you're primed. You're not hoping you're in prime time. You are in prime time. And to me, that's how I do it. And once you prime yourself, you start noticing things to be grateful for all the time. And when I asked Sir John Templeton, one of the first billionaire investor, international investor in the whole world, started with nothing, built to that. When I asked him, I said, what's the secret to wealth? I'll never forget. He looked at me and smiled and he said, Tony, what do you teach? And I said, well, I teach a lot of things. Which thing? And he goes, gratitude. He goes, you and I, how many billionaires do you and I know that are miserable human beings and they're so unhappy? He said, they're poor. And if you've got $1 billion, but you're frustrated, angry, and sad all the time, your life is frustrated, angry, and sad. How many people don't have nothing, but they're grateful for their family or for their health?
Take a breath.
So that is the game.
To me.
Okay. Take a breath. There's the sleep last. So one of the things that Tony's saying, and I'm finding this to be true, and it's like every couple of years you go back, everything leads back to Tony Robbins is one of our sayings, right? So I went back checking out Tony Robbins stuff this week, and I started watching a lot of his teachings and stuff, and I'm like, God damn it. He's just saying the jump on the trampoline bullshit. Like, get up in the morning and take a cold shower and jump on a trampoline and think of things you're thankful for and raise your hands up and down. I'm like, okay. Why does this guy keep saying this silly shit? Like, if that is the answer, okay, if Tony Robbins does have the answer, then how am I not asking the right questions to then get to that answer, you know? And so I really looked at what he was saying, and then I really kind of tested it this last week and kind of watched myself. And it's so true, like what he's saying is like, and when he says in other works and stuff, it's like, you're not gonna be able to go solve complex problems and take on bad days when you feel like shit. And so for Tony, with feeling at the bottom as a demon, and Gary's the opposite, he has feeling at the top as a savior, Tony's like, hey, if my feelings are off, I'm just a fucking mess. Because Tony has the fucking stack from the feeling function up. He's got everything else. Double observing, TE, like he's got the fucking loaded deck. Number 2, right? But if that little FI, feminine, is crashing and crying and burning and he feels bad, None of it works, right? And so he's really focused on like, hey, you got to have steps to physically feel better, especially if you're big, you're giant, you're kinesthetic, blah, 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 but whatever. So I'm like, all right, let me try that for a week. So like when I would have times where it's like, oh, I don't want to record tomorrow, or I got a lot of things going on, or I got a headache or whatever, I'll be like, okay, Tony Robbins, focus on just spending however long it takes. This morning it took me 2 extra hours. Okay, just do your little exercise routine and your stretches and your supplements to get rid of the headache. Okay, so focused on that, got rid of the headache. Okay, so Michael, Shan, Cody, they did, okay, go take care of their bullshit. Okay, get that set. Okay, so now take some time for yourself. So I'm just focusing on my routine to get my body to feel better. And then I turn on my Mind Effects, my ISTP guy, the number one guy, that get my flex, get my pump going again, get that back. And I'm just consciously focused on, get this meat sack that's the end of the week, is a little tired out, kind of it's dragging ass, a lot of things going on. Focus on getting that meat sack back up into a 60% positive state. And focus on that as the thing. And what do you do? Well, I take my cold shower and I take my... What do you take? Guess what? You can steal his, you can steal mine, you can steal the other guys, but in a year from now, your list still has to be updated. But the point is, if you focus on, of course, you're going to feel like shit next Wednesday. What is the plan? What is the routine? Do you have a jumping jack? Do you have a trampoline? Do you have a drink? Do you take a shower? What is it that works for you? Rather than sitting there going, well, this is real.
To me, it comes down to its cousin, which is perspective.
Yes.
So I do something very similar. Every single day, I make pretend that my mother, dad, sister, brother, wife, or children are killed. Now I know this is a different version of it. I know, you didn't expect that one?
Look at the power play.
I know it's a little different.
Yes. They get stabbed in the eye, and then they take out the groin.
Like it's sometimes even in detail, but I will tell you, it's very fleeting. It usually happens within, but I promise you, I know it's a little left field. It's insane what that perspective does for me. Nothing, and I feel it, and I feel it, and I feel it in my soul.
Okay, you see that? You see what happens? A lot going on there. So Tony felt hit in the FI. Tony's like, what are you doing with feelings? They're the hardest thing ever. Gary's like, masculine FE at the top, motherfucker. I picture my parents dying. This is what I do. Masculine feeler as a saver. I picture shit like that. Like, that's what gets me going. And so Tony's like, oh! And so Tony has a freak out. And then feels weird, feels like the beta. And then, these guys are manhandling each other all day. Like, they must get in so much trouble with women. Because these double masculines are so fucking grabby. So they're grabbing each other the whole time. So Tony is like grabbing Gary, rubbing his belly, kissing him on the head, trying to reestablish dominance because, Tony got toppled over, right? But what's interesting is the routine, and Gary's talked about this for years, is that he does it about 4 times a week, usually in the shower, and he will emotionally picture going all the way to the bottom of his closest family died, and he experiences those bad negative emotions, which is what he can do as a saver feeler, feels that, locks that in masculine, and then goes about his day. Right? So, and that works. That works for him. Is that going to work for you? Statistically, probably not. For some people out there, kinda. Maybe it's a trampoline. Maybe it's a jumping on it. Yeah, man, maybe. So you can find, just the point is, your meat sack has got a set of codes of something that does get you a restart, does get your chemicals back going, get your perspective back right. So you at least now are at the 60% mark to okay, now go take on your day. That still is hard enough as it is, right? All right, last point. The number ones and the number twos, they both have responsibility at the top. And so we're trying to kind of get the words figured out. We went through this with the animals, like sleep and play and consume and blast and all that. And those are still but those are still negotiable. I'd like to get them settled in the first 10 years when we start doing a lot of the writings, like those things are locked down, I don't like that intuition is symbolized with an N. There's shit, little OCD stuff that bothers me. So the words we're still looking for. But the thing that we're finding with the words is responsibility might be switched out with specialist or generalist or whatever. But the problem is we're grabbing words that people are saying. So if a 4 and a 3, they're like, I don't like the word responsibility. It's like, well, it's your demon, so go ahead. What do you have to say? And you take their point of view, but what I really want to hear is people that have responsibility in their top stack, the 1s and 2s. What words are they saying? What are they talking about to manage this burden the 1s and 2s have? And that is they've got to be responsible for all this stuff. And we'll close on that.
And by the way, and I'm sure for your business, when you're the last line of defense, you know how they say occupation on the doctor form? The last time I filled it out, I said firefighter. Because that's what I think I do for a living. It's just problems. Yeah. When I get done with this interview, I'm gonna look at my phone, 7 problems, 7 fires to put out. That's what we do. For me, it's perspective. I don't understand how people don't get that there's 7+ billion people, that there's so many people that have it worse than you.
Look, if you live in this country, if you don't have 100 million people, I care. But if you live in poverty in this country, you're the 1%. You're not the 99%.
I know.
2/3 of the planet lives on $2.50 a day, $900 a year. If you're making $18,000 a year, I don't want you to make $18,000, but you got to start with gratitude that you're one of the richest humans on earth. That's the only way to put you are.
Preaching. D-Rock, don't.